Border Patrol agents arrested 5 confirmed child sex traffickers in 5 different locations, different sectors of the border over one weekend. We have thousands and thousands of drones flying over our border. And what are they using as weapons of war right now in Ukraine? Drones.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjakovic. And we are unapologetically outspoken.
Hello and happy Wednesday. All right, so I want to start out today talking about something that I've been seeing all over social media, which is people calling for the boycott of Tyson Foods. And the reason for this is they closed a factory in Iowa that sadly will lead to more than 1,000 people losing their jobs. Meanwhile, they are employing 42,000 immigrants. So people are pretty pissed in this Iowa town, as you can imagine. And according to a Fox News article, the company's corporate social responsibility executive, sounds like a great title, right? For a useless job.
Say, what the hell is that? Yeah.
Well, it's the person that says, quote, "We would like to employ another 42,000 if we could find them," end quote. So what happened was Tyson partnered with this organization called the Tent Partnership for Refugees to hire asylum seekers. And people are outraged over losing jobs to illegal immigrants. And so they're taking to social media to blast Tyson Foods and pointing out all of the products that should be boycotted that fall under the Tyson umbrella, like Scarcely, Ballpark, Jimmy Dean, Hillshire Farm, and a whole bunch of other brands that I didn't recognize. And one of our favorite people, Jesse Waters, covered this story on primetime. And when they requested a comment from Tyson, a spokesperson said, quote, "Tyson Foods is proud to employ a diverse workforce, including immigrants, all of whom are legally authorized to work in the United States," end quote. So JD Vance was on Jesse's show, and I thought he summed this up really nicely. He said, "That is not capitalism or a market economy. That is the decimation of the American middle class via illegal immigration, and it's happening all over the country." And I think he hit the nail on the head because the middle class is fading away. And just like Tim Enlow was talking about when we had him on the show last week, that we only have so many resources to go around. And these migrants are overloading the system. And the same goes for the economy. Like, it's cheap labor for companies. So of course they're going to hire illegals. So what happens when these 20 million illegals replace the middle class workforce? I think what happens is 15-minute cities, central bank digital currency, total dependence on the government. And Tyson is not the only company doing this. I mean, look at how many other companies are using slave labor overseas, yet we're still buying their products. And this is why I'm liking this new trend that I'm seeing, where a lot of young people are like trying to buy land, make their own bread, buy chickens, grow their own food, and just trying to detach from the dependence on these companies that really don't give a shit.
Yeah, and it's no secret that the Biden admin wants to get rid of the middle class. And
Yeah.
that's the global agenda, period, is getting rid of the middle class so we can just have a population in poverty that's easy to control.
Right.
And like you said, thousands of people are boycotting Tyson, which is awesome. And now the company is backpedaling and saying they strongly oppose illegal immigration. And like you said, they only hire workers who are legally authorized to work in the state. But it's not just the Iowa factory that's been closed. Tyson also recently closed, or they're planning to close, plants in Indiana, Virginia, Arkansas, and Missouri. And getting rid of these jobs is obviously destroying American families. And I was reading an article in the Blast that this Iowa plant, the result of the shutdown was a loss of 1,276 people losing their jobs in a town of only 8,000 people. Like, that's a huge percentage of the town's population that has relied on their Tyson factory jobs to provide for their families. And the article also stated that Tyson already employs over 40,000 immigrants out of their 120,000 employees. So that's a third of their workforce. And the employment for these migrants reportedly comes with benefits like having fully paid for immigration lawyers. Now, I don't have a problem with hiring migrants, especially when companies can't find Americans to fill the positions, because let's be honest here, some Americans are lazy fucks who don't want to work, and migrants have traditionally taken on the shit jobs that lazy Americans have like decided are beneath them that they don't want to do. So if Americans don't want the jobs and migrants do, then cool, give them the jobs. But when you close an entire factory and you put Americans out of jobs while simultaneously announcing you want to hire 42,000 immigrants, that's like an entirely different ballgame.
And how stupid. Like, do they not have a PR person? I mean, so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just everything's out of control. And I want to point out that I know we talk about the border a lot, and we talk about the severe consequences of unchecked illegal migration into America pretty much every week. But in addition to taking away resources and jobs from Americans, like this latest move with Tyson Foods, our lack of national security due to our wide open border for the past few years has honestly become like one of the scariest and most problematic issues that our country is facing. And it has the potential to escalate into extreme violence and chaos if the predictions about what might be coming this summer with terrorist attacks and riots and election fraud, if all that proves to be true. So we're going to keep talking about the border, no matter how repetitive it may seem, because new shit comes up every day and none of it's good. So, Stephanie, I don't know if you heard about this, but there's been another confirmed scary migrant encounter at the border. And reportedly, this happened on March 9th, but internal government documents weren't released until this past Monday. And surprise, surprise, it was another military age male. So this guy is a 22-year-old Lebanese man named Basil Ebedi. I probably said that wrong. But he was stopped by Border Patrol agents after illegally crossing the border. And when he was in custody and being checked by medical staff, he was asked why he came to the States. And his response was, quote, "I'm going to try to make a bomb," end quote.
Who just
So
like
this
admits that?
Right, exactly. So this guy's placed in isolation until the tactical terrorism response team arrives. And then the next day, they're questioning him. And this guy admits to being a member of Hezbollah, which is like an Iran-backed terrorist group. He said he's been a member for 7 years and that his training was focused on jihad, meaning he was trained to target non-Muslims. And he said that prior to that, he spent 4 years guarding weapons locations for Hezbollah when he was a kid. So that puts him at around like 11 years old when he started engaging in terrorist activity. So during the interview, he apparently told the agents he was trying to leave Lebanon because he didn't want to kill people. But then he said his intention was to go to New York and build a bomb. So Fox News was questioning, like, is there any confirmation of him actually being a Hezbollah member? Because volunteering terrorist connections isn't normal, right?
Right.
Here's what I think. Even if he's not a Hezbollah terrorist and he's like a self-proclaimed wannabe terrorist nut job who said his intention was to build a bomb in New York, like is that supposed to be more comforting than a confirmed Hezbollah
Right.
terrorist? I don't think so.
Either way, it's
Like, no.
bad news for us, you know?
Exactly. And he's not the only supposed terrorist caught at the border lately. Last week on March 8th, a Colombian national on the terror watch list who was identified as being a member of a terrorist group in Colombia called Revolutionary Forces of Colombia. This guy was arrested near El Paso in Texas after he illegally crossed the border. And his name is Germanton Gennaro Quinones Caraval. And there was a counterterrorism report by our government that says this group, Revolutionary Forces of Colombia, is one of Colombia's most powerful violent dissident groups in the country. They conduct armed assaults, assassinations, extortion operations, and hostage taking. And then less than a month ago, another Colombian, this guy, a 40-year-old on the terror watch list named Carlos Obed Yepes Bedoa, he was caught crossing into Eagle Pass. And I think we mentioned on a previous episode, but in the past 6 months, 59 people on the terror watch list have been caught by Border Patrol illegally crossing the border. And again, these are only the ones who are being caught. Like, who knows how many more are getting through undetected? And it's not just terrorists. Like, Stephanie, did you know last week the Border Patrol agents arrested 5 confirmed child sex traffickers in 5 different locations, different sectors of the border over one weekend? This is 5 different crossings in Arizona and Texas.
That's crazy. And you know what, though? I'm not surprised. I think human trafficking has gotten to the worst it's ever been in our country's history. And what's really scary is I'm starting to see signs of it here in Florida. I'm sure people are in every state. In my community, it's now up to 5 incidents in just the last week of men trying to take women from the parking lots of Target, Publix, a fitness center. It happened to me and my kids where we were being followed in a very public place, broad daylight. We were being followed, and the women that were following us had a man waiting in a car outside. Like, it's getting really scary seeing this left and right. And then near Miami, 3 illegal immigrants from Guatemala were charged with kidnapping a woman in their pickup truck near a park and sexually assaulting her twice. But thankfully, she managed to escape and flag down another vehicle and get away. But it's like, this is terrifying. And we're starting to see it like in our what we thought were our safe towns. It's everywhere now. And how do we fix it from here? I mean, I don't know, but it's really scary.
Yeah, and here's where I'm going to go off in the weeds a little bit on a conspiracy tangent because a few weeks ago, I was listening to Real AF like I do every episode, and Andy and DJ were talking about how we're getting all this increased attention to illegal migrant crimes. And so over the past few weeks, I started noticing like more and more illegal migrant crimes are being reported in the news. Just yesterday, an illegal migrant stabbed 2 people in the back at a laundry facility in Missouri. Last week, an illegal migrant church teacher in Maryland was accused of molesting young girls. And it turns out like this wasn't the first time. He's already been deported from the country twice with like 25 counts of sexual misconduct, and yet he's back again. In February was a multitude of things. There was a 27-year-old illegal from El Salvador that killed a 2-year-old boy in Maryland, a 19-year-old Honduran illegal migrant who went on like a 25-day rampage in Louisiana, robbing, he stabbed a man, he raped a 14-year-old girl. There was an illegal Venezuelan migrant who also raped a young girl in Virginia. There was an illegal migrant in Texas who had previously been deported 5 fucking times, who killed a 10-year-old boy in a hit and run. And not to mention the consistent stories that we keep seeing of attempted murder, assault, robbery, and numerous crimes being committed by illegal migrants daily in blue cities like Chicago and New York. So as I'm looking up these stories, I start noticing like a lot of the articles are using the term illegal migrant. And this is totally different from how the media responds when significant crimes are committed by Black people or by transgender people. I mean, you can look at incidents over the past few years where that's like left out of the narrative, right? Until it's discovered that, oh, it was a transgender person. It's never mentioned in the primary articles. And then when that comes out, they sweep it under the carpet because we can't be outraged when the DEI agenda is being challenged or questioned and people of color or LGBTQIA XYZ people are committing crimes. But we're drawing all of this attention to migrant crimes. So why? And I couldn't find the clip from the episode of Real AF, and I didn't have time to go back and listen to like hours of podcast episodes. But if I remember correctly, what Andy was saying was they're purposely bringing attention to illegal migrant crimes, like what happened with Lake and Riley, because they're setting us up for the riots that are coming this summer. But instead of like a race riot of Black versus white, like the George Floyd incident, it's going to be an incident involving an illegal migrant or illegal migrants committing these crimes that is going to spark like massive chaos, unrest, and violence over the summer. And it sounds like we're right on track with that. Like, what do you think, Stephanie? What does your conspiracy brain say?
Well, if it continues like it is now, where it looks like Trump is way ahead and he's going to get in, we know they're going to do something to try to intervene. And just like they did during the last election, they basically threatened Americans saying, if you want peace and you want the riots to stop, then vote for Biden. So, yeah, I totally see this. And I thought that when we saw all of the Palestinian protesters like in the street within one day. And so just think about that. It's like before, with these like Antifa people, they had to find like kids that were willing to get paid and bust to these cities to do this. Well, now they have 20 million migrants that will gladly, take a free paycheck and a free ride to a major city and do this on their behalf. So I absolutely could see that coming. I mean, we've said it so many times before. They will stop at nothing to make sure that Trump doesn't get into office. And yeah, this would be a great way to cause a riot, to cause all kinds of chaos. And then they have to have martial law, right? Like they have to
Right.
get control. And then, oh, then there's no elections because it's too dangerous to go to the polls or whatever. Like something's coming. And I absolutely can see them using these migrants for that.
Yeah, and speaking of Trump, just totally off topic, I saw earlier today, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was like 450 million or something that he has to come up with for this New York fraud case to post his bond.
Yeah,
And he's saying like I can't come up with that money. So like the what are they gonna do? Like
right.
that's a perfect way to keep him from running because what's her name? Letitia Jackson, the attorney general for New York, she basically said like, oh, if he can't post bond, then too bad. And she's gonna start like selling off his shit and like
Yep.
this is a perfect example of them trying to prevent him to run. Who the fuck posts a $454 million bond?
It's total election interference. It's
Yeah.
crazy, but they think they can do whatever they want because they always get away with it. And it's like, okay, if people do revolt, well, at this point, they've got their whole army of migrants to fight back. So we're fucked.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of conspiracy theories, or let me say, setting conspiracy theories aside, my fucking page just froze. Hang on.
That's been happening to me like left and right. I don't know what is going on with the internet, but it's been freezing a lot.
Okay, well, here we are. Here we are. Okay. So let's go back to some statistics, right? Because there was this recent revelation of the alarming number of drones that are coming across the southern border. I don't know if you saw this, but apparently it's over 1,000 drones a month. And there was a recent Senate Armed Forces Committee hearing where it was revealed that a 2023 report suggested that the Rio Grande Valley border sector in Texas alone saw 10,000 over 10,000 drones, and Border Patrol detected over 25,000 drones operating near the border that didn't cross the border. And the report indicated that these drones are being used by criminal organizations like drug cartels who are trafficking fentanyl into the states, and they're using drones to surveil Border Patrol agents and hide their smuggling operations. And when the general who was being questioned by the committee was asked about the threat to national security, he said he hadn't seen the drones pose a threat yet, but he thinks they're a cause for concern. Like, I'm sorry, but I think drug cartels surveilling Border Patrol is a national security threat, don't you?
Was this the same guy that didn't think the Chinese balloon was anything more than a weather balloon? Like, give me a freaking break. Oh
Yeah,
my
it's insane. And then I was reading an article in the Main Wire and it was talking about this. And it was saying there was no mention whether any of these drones have military capabilities. And there's been like no measures taken to stop them. And the article brought up exactly what I was thinking when I first started reading it, which was okay, we have thousands and thousands of drones flying over our border. And what are they using as weapons of war right now in Ukraine? Drones. And how interesting that drones are being used as weapons of war while we have drones coming over our border and unprecedented numbers of Chinese nationals coming over our border.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. And one of the other things DeSantis did here in Florida is they are counting the cartels as a terrorist organization, which they need to be. Like this is terrorism. And you're absolutely right. These are weapons. And why is our government just sitting like with their head up their ass? Like this makes no sense whatsoever. And then like a few months back, I think it was when they were finding weapons that were from America that were supposed to be sent to Ukraine, but ended up in the hands of the cartels. It's like this shit is scary.
Yep.
And then the other thing that's scary is like what kind of diseases are coming into our country. So I don't know if you heard about the measles outbreak in a Chicago migrant shelter, but apparently moving forward they're going to be requiring all people in these Chicago shelters to be vaccinated. But it just points out like how we have no clue what these people are bringing into our country. When you have measles like spreading at this time when everyone's, been vaccinated for the most part, these people are coming from these foreign countries that aren't vaccinated against simple things and it's causing an outbreak. And all these Democrats, they were so worried about COVID, yet don't bat an eye about severe diseases spreading because of these unvaccinated migrants, and they can just do whatever they want and get us all sick with things like tuberculosis and measles, and it's no big deal. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, and on top of that, Chicago is now evicting migrants from shelters because they have this like 60-day stay policy. And so, okay, I guess just send all the people infected with undocumented illness and disease back out into the general public so we can create another pandemic before the elections. How convenient would that be?
It's
And
like
then,
they planned it, you know?
yeah, shocking.
Strange.
And here's something else a lot of people either aren't aware of or aren't paying attention to, and that's the increase in illegal border crossings between Canada and the northern border of the United States. And we don't hear much about this because our southern border is the main shit show. But the northern border is seeing unprecedented numbers of illegal crossings, and an alarming number of people are on the terror watch list. So, this was reported by mainstream media CBS News last Friday. In the past year, Border Patrol agents in Beecher Falls, Virginia, have encountered like a flood of migrants like they've never seen before. These migrants are coming through Canada. They're crossing into remote wooded areas that are on the border of like New Hampshire, Vermont, and Eastern New York. So the agent in charge at Beecher Falls, Eric Lavallee, he called it an exponential shift in migration that they weren't prepared for. And he said he's never seen anything like it in the 20 years that he's been on the job. So in fiscal year 2023, agents in the Swanton sector, which is this area up north, it covers 295 miles. So they arrested 7,000 migrants last year. And while this may not seem like anything compared to the fucking millions pouring across the southern border, this number is more than the past 12 years combined. So that's a big jump. And more importantly, this area on our northern border is where the majority of people on the terror watch list are coming from. So, according to this article, in fiscal year 2023, Border Patrol apprehended 564 people on the terror watch list. Of that 564, 484 of them were encountered on the northern border, not the southern border. And so far in fiscal year 2024, another 103 people on the terror watch list have already been apprehended trying to come through the northern border in Canada. So this guy, Lavalier, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry, I always suck with names. But he said, quote, here we're not seeing the same prevalence of individuals requesting asylum or wanting to be caught. The people here that we're seeing, for the most part, they're trying to find that seam. They're trying to find that vulnerability and come into the United States without detection, end quote. And I guess it's been pretty easy for them to do so because I didn't know this either, but up until the end of February, Canada didn't require Mexicans or foreign nationals to have travel visas. And they were able to just come to Canada as tourists by paying a fee and filling out an electronic form. And so, according to this Border Patrol guy, people were using this program and they were being arrested at the border for illegally trying to come into the US within 24 hours of landing in Canada. So, obviously, they weren't there for tourism.
Yeah. I saw someone post on TikTok. It was like these American guys who I guess went over to Canada on like a hunting and fishing trip. And I don't know, they didn't have like some kind of documentation or something. And they were like in a cage held by like Border Patrol. And they're like, so American citizens, this is how we're treated. Meanwhile, you have all of these migrants just walking across, like, no problem whatsoever. It's absolutely insane. And when our southern border is being flooded, it does leave vulnerabilities up at the north because you can only have so many people, in each place. So that's really concerning. Um, and another thing that I'm seeing all over TikTok, back to Chicago really quick, but the media isn't covering this and it's all over social media. So there is a TikTok creator, her name is Caress Marie, and she's posting about the illegals that are taking over the poor neighborhoods in Chicago. And she said that they're forming gangs and they're taking like complete control of Black neighborhoods. And she shared a video of a group of about 20 illegals that were allegedly taking over this home without the owner's consent. They were all just kind of pushing their way in. And the reason I believe her is that number one, she shows videos. Like she'll go driving through the neighborhood and you see street corners with dozens of illegals that appear to be doing questionable things. But also, every time she posts a video explaining what's happening, it's censored. Like they'll remove the sound or sometimes they'll take down the whole video. And I've also seen various news clips that are confirming that there is a Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua, and they've been reported to be here in the US now. And, I'm sure they're flocking to these sanctuary cities like Chicago and New York. And to be honest, like I didn't even think about this until I started following this woman on TikTok, but I'm sure there's like all sorts of different gangs, as well as like a cartel that's now commonplace in US cities. Like I'm sure they're organizing and, who knows what kind of havoc they're going to wreak. But it's just another thing we have to worry about.
I recently saw too the similar things are happening in New York, and like people are talking shit because what's her name?
Oh,
Cortez.
AOC.
AOC. Yeah, it's all in her district, which is turning into like a total fucking slum.
Yeah, they said it's like a third world country in her district, and people are like following her down the street, like yelling at her because, she's been so for this open border that's completely destroyed her own community.
Yep.
But no one is allowed to talk about it, and that includes immigration judges. So Republicans in the House are now looking into a quote reported gag order that forbids immigration judges from speaking with Congress or the news media about the Biden administration's unprecedented immigration crisis, end quote. So this would actually violate a guarantee that federal employees are free to talk to Congress and the media. And the Associated Press reported that the chief immigration judge, Sheila McNulty, told the leaders of the National Association of Immigration Judges that they're going to need approval to participate in any writing or speaking engagements, which would include like going on the news, talking to Congress, like anything like that. So, in my opinion, this sounds like the censorship we're seeing from the left, except now they're literally censoring judges. Total craziness.
Yeah, and it's all part of the plan, right? Because also this past Sunday, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton basically said the quiet part out loud when he went on Fox Business and he called out Biden for using illegal migrants to cheat on the census for the upcoming election. So I was reading in the Daily Caller that Paxton told the host of the show, Maria Bartiromo, he said, quote, they are counting illegal migrants in their census so they can move these people around to the states where they want more congressional representatives and more electoral college votes. It's purely political. So he's willing to trade the safety of America, whether it's terrorism, whether it's drugs, or whether it's other crimes. He being Joe Biden, he's willing to trade all of that to get more Democratic votes so that they can control Congress and they can control the presidency, end quote. And so keep in mind that U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland recently said that the DOJ is going to challenge any state initiatives that would impose restrictions on mail-in voting or using drop boxes or requiring voter ID. So Maria asked Paxton about this, and his response was like, it's clear that the only reason Garland doesn't want voter ID laws is because it's going to make it easier for the left to cheat.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they've been fighting this, because they know there's going to be all these migrants without IDs. And that reminds me, did you see the interview with Don Lemon and Elon Musk that ended up getting Don Lemon fired from like his new show on X? It's,
No.
oh my gosh. So I have a clip of it that I'm gonna play, and it's where Elon Musk is like explaining this whole thing to Don Lemon about how they're going to use these migrants to sway like the how many electors each district gets. And Don Lemon's brain like just can't process it. It's like freaking hilarious. So listen to this. Oops.
Talk about the great replacement theory now. Some of the things that you post, the great replacement theory, you claim that Democrats, President Biden's immigration plan to open up the border, you said that the president is getting, and Democrats are doing it to get more votes. But undocumented immigrants cannot vote in federal elections, so how is that possible? Right. Well, you're conflating two things. One is great replacement theory. The other is, which I don't subscribe to that. I'm simply saying that there is an incentive here. If legal immigrants, which I think have a very strong bias to, at least everything I read, it's a very strong bias to vote Democrat. The more that come into the country, the more they're likely to vote in that direction. It is, in my view, a simple incentive to increase voters to Democrat voters. And yeah, so the question is like how? So there's a few ways that this works. One is that when the census is done, the census is based on all people in an area, whether they are citizens or not. So if there are a concentration of people who came here illegally in a particular state or in a particular state, that state will actually then get an increased number of House seats. So the House seat apportionment is proportionate to the number of people, not the number of citizens. So the illegals overwhelmingly go to places like California and New York, and if you just look at the math, if you look at the apportionment with and without illegals, I believe California would lose. I believe the blue state, there would be a net loss of blue states of approximately 20 seats in the House. This also applies to the electoral college. So you say, like, well, this also applies to electing the president, because the electoral votes are also done by apportionment the same way that House seats are done. But the reason, Elon, the electoral college is in place is to balance that, so that doesn't happen. So what you're saying about it is the exact opposite of the reason why the electoral college is there. The electoral college at this point, in our history, gives people who are in smaller states and red states much more of an influence over our elections than people who are in blue states, and the majority of the people in this country. That's what the electoral college does. It actually does the exact opposite of what you're saying. It protects people who are in smaller states and protects people who are in red states. Well, the red states, because they tend to be smaller and less populous. I think that statement is what you said is true, but what I said is also true, which is that if, as is the case, a disproportionate number of legal immigrants go to blue states, they amplify the effect of a blue state vote. And the math, as I understand it, you can research this obviously very easily on there. It's pretty straightforward to research this. But my understanding is that there would be that the Democrats would lose approximately 20 seats in the House if illegals were not counted in the census. And that's also 20 less electoral votes for president. So the illegals absolutely do affect the who controls the House and who controls the presidency. It does not affect the Senate.
Okay, so that's him trying to explain it, and like Don Lemon can't wrap his mind around it because he's a fucking idiot. So anyhow, he was
Yes.
fired after that interview, which is awesome. Because I can't stand that guy. Oh my gosh. So anyhow, let's talk about Texas real quick, because the Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito extended an order that blocks Texas from implementing that new law that we talked about that would allow them to like arrest and deport illegals. And the Biden administration asked that this law be halted until its constitutionality could be determined. So this is now like the third extension that's been put in place. And I just think it shows that the Biden administration isn't just allowing the open border. They are actively taking legal action to prevent Texas from getting a handle on the border crisis.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's like, you can't argue that. You can't argue that
Right.
the Biden admin sues every time a state tries to enforce their border. And so what is Congress doing about the border crisis? Well, we talked last week, like this Friday is the deadline for our clown show of a government to come up with an agreement on funding for the border and the remaining bills that need to be approved, because remember, 70% of the federal government still needs to be funded in order to avoid a shutdown by Friday. And at the time of our recording this, on Tuesday afternoon, details haven't been released yet, but the Washington Examiner reported this morning that a deal has apparently been struck between the House and the Senate on appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security, which has been the main point of contention between Republicans and Democrats in terms of border security. So we don't know what that is yet, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Well, you know what? I'm sure that whatever it is, it's going to involve Republicans caving into the Democrat demands, because that's what happens every single time. So I guarantee that's what we'll see. But we'll keep everyone here posted on whatever it is that comes through. But that's what we have so far. I know it's alarming, and I feel like we need a peppy episode next, because this shit like really, I'm scared for especially for my kids' future, and just seeing what's happening in my hometown here with like immigrants. It's scary. So sorry to freak everyone out, but we want to keep you informed, and we'll keep you posted on the next thing that comes with the border, because it's constant news. But anyhow, I hope that you have a great day, and we'll see you back here on Friday. Thanks for tuning in. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.